Look, I think I can say I was not very nervous, but anxious, because I mean, having engaged with Moody's the week after my appointment, and had a series of other meetings, and then after that, when we went to London to meet with investors, we met with Moody's again, and it's almost like they wanted to confirm our story. And I think we had a credible story, and we also had a very, a good team. But also, it's not a story we were making up. It is a story that actually presents itself in a way. And the team that we took to London of business, labor, and ourselves was a team that actually, spoke from the same hymn book. And on Thursday in the week Moody's was here, we also met with a few of my colleagues also other ministers who, like Minister of Energy, Minister of Public Enterprise, Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister of Economic Development. We didn't have to make up the story. It is a story that was unfolding a country that is in a process of rebuilding itself.
A lot of people I've spoken to in business say this is no time for complacency, and you have to do a lot more. What are you planning to do very rapidly in the next 6 months?
Look, it's a collective effort again, as I said, with particularly the ministers in the economics cluster, but everybody is actually hard at work to make sure that this really works. Because if you look at the things that we're focusing on, ranging from inspiring confidence, that's not a matter for one minister or one individual. We actually are building on the mood that is already prevailing on the ground, but all of us have to do something in order to actually inspire that confidence. Policy certainty is critical, but economic growth is at the center of everything, so that is our main focus. But in focusing on economic growth, we also need a very sustainable balance sheet, a sovereign balance sheet. So we do need to look after the fiscus and also address the risks that might actually have an impact on that, ranging from state-owned companies that are ailing and some of them that require immediate attention, but also making sure that we focus on the sectors that would actually generate the growth that we require.
I'm going to talk a bit more about borrowing in a minute, but firstly, what do you think the average business person out there in South Africa is going to notice? What are the physical signs we're going to see of rapid change in this economy?
Look, the environment itself needs to be conducive to doing business. There are questions, you do get questions in relation to some of the key areas, the energy sector in particular, where we do need to do something, the mining sector. We do need to accelerate some of the policy decisions and areas of intervention, including the passing of legislation, the MPRDA being one of them. We also need, business also needs a stable environment in our finances as the country, and being able to play a role. An example of the Youth Employment Service Initiative that came out of a program between government and the private sector is one of those that I think are beginning to gain traction, and I think the President will be launching that tomorrow. And there's a commitment, and they also want to see that government is indeed committed to this partnership and relationship between the public and the private sector.
You mentioned the mining charter there. Your mining minister in cabinet has said he's going to sort this out within 3 months. It's now just over 2 months left for that deadline. Obviously, it's something that the ratings agencies look very carefully at when they're making their decisions. How worried are you may not be able to sort it out swiftly and agreeably to all parties?
Look, I'm encouraged by his optimism. This is a world that requires us to be, even if it means overly optimistic on some of this. But as we get down to business, that's where our commitment gets tested. And I think working with all the stakeholders in that space, even if it doesn't meet the deadline, but the commitment will actually begin to yield results.
And what about growth? We're talking about, was it 1.5% maybe this year? What's your plan? What's your hope for growth in the future?
Look, if we are to build on the positive mood that is on the ground, we are likely to actually achieve even better than that. As you have seen, we're lucky that last quarter results for last year actually came up and surprised us on the upside, which is a good base to build on. And again, as you said earlier, there is no room for complacency. We need to build on that and make sure that we do some of those things. The structural reforms we're talking about, with confidence actually being at the base of it. Because if with confidence alone, actually it's a currency on its own. And then things like focusing on the sectors like agriculture and tourism, where we are placing a particular focus, dealing with the issue in telecommunications, the spectrum and the broadband in particular, focusing on the transport and logistics in that space, but also beginning to look at some of the barriers to entry into the business space. All of those things, as I said, requires that collective approach, and it is already in government's program, as outlined by the President in his State of the Nation address and the Minister of Finance when he tabled the budget this year.